Welcome to Conversations with David Ibarra. Today our guest is Dave Durocher. Welcome to our program, Dave.
Thank you, David. It's good to be here.
Well, listen, I'd like to open up by just you telling us a little bit about you, and towards the end, tell us about those early years of trouble.
Well, today, a little bit about me. Today, I'm the executive director with the Other Side Academy, and the Other Side Academy is a 2.5-year re-education facility for people who have really destroyed their lives, long-term drug addicts, people who have lived their lives in jails and in prisons. My average student's been arrested over 25 times. So that gives you a little context of what I'm currently doing. But my own story, I had to go through an organization very similar to the Other Side Academy called Delancey Street. That's because at a very young age, some of you may remember who Dennis the Menace was. I was Dennis the Menace. I was a criminal before I ever started doing drugs. But around the age of, 11 or 12, I was smoking pot. And then soon after that, I was doing cocaine. And it got so bad for me that I was the kind of kid that would take a vial of cocaine with me to class. And when the teacher wasn't looking, I'd pour that coke in between the pages of my book, pull the big pen apart, lean over and snort coke. So as you can imagine, my early years were a mess. Mom and Dad tried to help doctors, counselors, therapists, all those things, but nothing worked. Graduated from high school, and when I graduated from high school, I went from cocaine to methamphetamine. That's really when the wheels fell off. Not that they weren't getting loose prior to that, because they were, but when I started doing meth, I was stealing and just doing all kinds of crimes to support my coke habit. And when I started doing meth, I started dealing meth. I never set out to do it. I didn't plan to do it. It just kind of happened. I'd buy some, sell some, buy some, sell some. Then there was an entrepreneurial gene, I guess, in me that I never knew I had because I had no reason to use it. And I would buy more and sell more. And pretty soon I was making money, a considerable amount of money. And guns became introduced to the lifestyle I was living. And as you can imagine, I started getting arrested. 2-year prison term, out for 59 days, 5-year prison term, out for 60 days, 6-year prison term, out for 4 months, 10-year prison term, out for 4 months. So really my life prior to getting to Delancey Street and then eventually coming to the Other Side Academy to help run the organization was a chaotic mess. Drugs, crime, jail, prison, destroyed relationships, family relationships, had kids I didn't raise, marriages I destroyed. Mom and Dad, I don't know how they made it through their marriage to this day. It's a mystery to me in spite of my best efforts to destroy that marriage. Wasn't my intention, but as I look back on it now, I don't know how they made it through it. So my life was a complete mess, and everybody I knew's life was a complete mess because of the way I was living it. And then I got a judge who was empathetic enough to give me the opportunity to go to a place called Delancey Street in Los Angeles, California. Delancey Street's been around for 50 years, 51 years now, and at that time about 42 years or somewhere in that area.
Tell me something, Dave. When you got an opportunity from the judge to go to Delancey Street, how did you really feel about going? Did you were you anxious, or was it sidestepping something? Tell me kind of what was going through your head.
After my 4th prison term, after the 10-year sentence, right? I need to put some context around the importance of why the judge made the decision they did and how fortunate I was that he did. After I got out of my 10-year prison sentence, which was my 4th one, the day I got out, I was on my way back. Literally the day I got out. There was no, I'm going to try to do the right thing this time. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to stay clean. I was getting high on day 1. Started dealing drugs again. Went to a house in Huntington Beach. Helicopter way high in the sky. I left that house after weighing up some drugs, and as I left, the cops were everywhere. They weren't going to go inside the house, so high-speed chase, wanting disregard for public safety, went through a roadblock. I decided I wanted the cops to kill me. I'm going to use my car as a battering ram. They didn't. They did the pit maneuver, spun me out of control up on an embankment, and commenced to give me the worst beating of my life. When I woke up in jail and went to court the first time, my deal was 29 years. Eventually, after many months of fighting my case pre-sentence, a couple of the ancillary charges had fallen off. They settled on 22 years, and they were emphatic that I'm going to get 22 years whether I cop a plea or whether I go to trial. It's rare for that to happen. Usually if you plead out, you get a little less time. You go to trial, you lose, you get it all. But they made it very clear that you're getting 22 years. There's no way around it, Mr. Durocher. We're done with you. I wrote Delancey Street a letter. They interviewed me. They accepted me. I got a letter of acceptance. I'm like, holy cow, I just got I won the lottery. It's the magic ticket. And the judge told me in no uncertain terms, hell no. You are not Delancey Street material. I will never send you to Delancey Street. You're going back to prison for the rest of your life. Now, if you want to continue to fight your case, get out of my courtroom. In California, you could fight your case for quite some time. Fire your public defender, keep asking for motions to be filed. I was playing the game. One night, because I wasn't really busy in my cell, I wrote him a letter. Judge Pacheco, 4 pages long, front and back. I said, Your Honor, and I never once told him he was wrong in his assessment of me, because he wasn't. But I said, Your Honor, what do you have to lose? I've been to prison 4 times already. It didn't work. Not that it's designed to. I get that. But Delancey Street interviewed me. They accepted me. They think they can help me. Why don't you give me a chance? If you send me to Delancey Street, one of 2 things will happen. I'll get kicked out or I'll split. You could lock me up for the rest of my life. Or the next time you see me, and this is all on paper, or the next time you see me is because I'm coming back to say thank you. 6 weeks later, I went to court. And in California, it's a tiny phone booth. Some of you might remember phone booths. Only imagine a smaller version. Ankle irons, waist irons, handcuffs. And I was sitting in that little cage in that courtroom like an animal, because that's who I'd become. And Judge Pacheco said, Mr. Durocher, against my better judgment, I'm going to give you the opportunity of a lifetime. I'm going to let you go to Delancey Street, but you're going to plead guilty to all of your charges today. You're signing a deal for 22 years. When you get kicked out or when you split, I've got you for the rest of your life. I couldn't believe what I had heard. I don't know if you've ever felt vertigo, good news, bad news, completely unexpected. I sat in that cage and I was kind of dizzy, like, I'm getting out of jail, right? But when I wrote Delancey Street, David, I did not write Delancey Street to change. I wrote Delancey Street because I was a coward and didn't want to go do my 22 years. It was a get-out-of-jail-free card for me. I didn't even know what change looked like. How could I have never been through a process like that? And when I got to Delancey Street, it wasn't easy. It was difficult. It's no doctors, no therapists, no counselors, just people like me, farther removed, calling me on my, can I say, calling me on my poop. In my face, calling me on my behavior from my peers. In many cases, people I had known from the streets, from jail, from prison for a long time, who got to Delancey Street before me and went through the change process. So I saw what change looked like. And it took some time to unwind all those bad behaviors, the way I saw the world, right, through my own experiences, through my own bad decisions. And slowly but surely, I started to catch on and think that maybe someday I could have a life too. And I had to go to Delancey Street for 2 years, David. I stayed for 8.5 years.
Wow. Partially
Partially because I'm a slow learner. You know that bell curve they talk about? I'm on the other side of it. But really, honestly, I could have graduated at 2 years and beat that 22-year prison sentence. But I fell in love with the process. And for the first time in my life, I fell in love with me. What I mean by that is I didn't look in the mirror and go, hey, Brad Pitt, love you. It's not what I mean. What I meant was I felt like I had purpose, my life had meaning, and just maybe I too could have a decent life someday. So I stayed many more years. In the last 5 years that I was at the Delancey Street, LA facility, I managed that entire facility for the last 5 years that I was there. 250 people at any given time, 15 vocational training schools, and I did it for free because the payment that I got was getting my life back, and you can't put a number on that.
No, you can't. Let me ask you something. How many students that have graduated under your mentoring, coaching, friendship, how many have reached out back to you and told you their story of redemption? And
you know, getting high and living that lifestyle was the intoxicant itself. Getting high was one piece of it. The lifestyle, the money, the drugs, the guns, the chaos, the mayhem, the high-speed chases, all of that is an adrenaline rush, right? It kind of fueled that lifestyle. Now, it took me a minute at Delancey Street to learn how to be effective in helping people. But once I did, I realized how much I love this. That high is free, and it never went away. And there wasn't a better high that I've ever had than having somebody come in through the front door, take a seat on the bench, and I get to interview them.
right.
Or they write a letter from jail. I go to jail, I interview them, and watch them go through the entire process, graduate, and go out there and live productive lives. And during that process, but particularly after that process, when they've changed, to have them come back and go, I couldn't have done it without you.
Right.
I don't take credit for that. But when they say I couldn't have done it without you, I played a part in the change process, an integral part of leadership, mentorship, coaching, influence, sometimes having to be the iron fist, other times maybe a velvet hammer. It just depends on what it was going to take. But there's no better feeling in the world than being able to help another human being get from where I was to where I've gotten. It's the new high.
Well, and there's a term for that, dose chemicals, dopamine, oxytocin, and those are the feel-good chemicals that come when we have a purpose, we're executing the purpose, we're realizing what we could be. I heard you in one of your speeches talk about you spent the first half of your life doing what?
I spent the first half of my life killing people. I'm going to spend the rest of it helping them live.
Wow. Cool.
And you just mentioned something that I think is important, the dopamine, the feel-good. Here's the thing that human beings don't realize, and maybe they will now. Human beings by nature are always chasing things that make them feel good. Money, material items, women, sex, drugs, whatever it is. When you become good, you stop chasing the feel-good. When you that doesn't mean you can't have nice things in life. That doesn't mean you can't go on vacations and have fun. But when your number one priority in life is to help other human beings and you become a good, decent human being yourself, you don't chase the feel-goods anymore. You enjoy the ones that come along with the ride. But it's no longer the goal is to for those instant feel-goods, instant gratification. I'm in the office every morning at 5:15 in the morning, conversation after conversation after conversation with people who need help. And at the end of the day,
I once had an individual tell me when he was doing the feel-good things, and I said, "What are you doing?" I was coaching this individual, and he says, "I'm faking it till I make it."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, if you fake it until you make it, the habit will be faking it, and you're going to become just a fraud." And in the second book I'm writing, I shared with you, and the Dave Durocher story is going to be shared in chapter 1. But the name of the book that I'm settling on is Living Ready, Beyond Think and Grow Rich. And when I sit down and I'm writing, I'm going through all the different things, your story, and 10 others. It all comes down to me that I remind myself that if you cannot achieve a happiness consciousness, you're in an unhappiness consciousness. When you're in an unhappiness consciousness, the first person you turn on is yourself. You begin to destroy yourself. It's common in a lot of people don't end up in the Other Side Academy, but whenever I get down, where I show up. Yeah. I show up over at your place and have dinner with the students, and it always makes me feel better. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about how you were at Delancey Street, then all of a sudden you come to Salt Lake City and start one of the most dynamic programs I have ever seen of a group of people together that care about each other.
Yeah. I left Delancey Street, and I had been out of the workforce for decades. Got into construction. I was making $30 an hour, right? I had been out of the workforce since the 80s, and $30 an hour was like a lot of money. I'm going to make 30. I thought it was a lot of money. And what I quickly realized was I didn't like construction. I'm hauling heavy equipment, Class A license. I went up to the Dakotas, worked in the oil fields, and I made what I refer to as stupid money. $15,000 a month. I'm putting all this money in the bank. And the cops can't take it from me this time. I've earned it. And I realized two things. I loved going to work, but I hated my job, right? And I was having an affair with my checkbook. And I realized that making money was fun, but saving lives was rewarding. I missed the people part of Delancey Street, but Delancey Street doesn't hire people. There's no paid positions. So I left the Dakotas, came back to Southern California, started doing presentations in these smaller programs all around LA. And then I got a phone call from a lady who had been in Delancey Street for almost 40 years, Charlotte Baker, almost there from the inception. She'd already left Delancey Street a number of years before that. And she said, "Dave, a couple of guys out of Utah want to start a replication of Delancey Street. If they're not crazy, is this something you'd be interested in?" I'm on my phone. I'm like, "Are you serious, Charlotte? Thousands have tried this." Unsuccessfully, I might add. But yeah, I'd be interested in taking a look at it. She came out to Utah, had a consultation meeting for a day with Joseph Grenny, our founder, and Tim Stay, our CEO, and she got back that Saturday and called me. She said, "Dave, they're not crazy." I said, "I'm not interested." Just kidding. They have to be if they want to do this. And a week later, Joseph Grenny and Tim Stay flew to Los Angeles. We met at Fleming's at LA Live area, and we sat down, and I said, "Don't either one of you ask me a question. Who in the hell are you? What is the genesis of thought behind this? What makes you think you can, and why would you want to? Who's first?" I interviewed them. They'll tell you the stories, how it went down. And after about a half hour of hearing each one of them tell me who they were, I knew I was in the presence of great men. Right. That's how the relationship started. couple weeks later, I was in Utah. We were looking for a property. We settled on the Armstrong Mansion Bed and Breakfast at 7th East and 1st South. We started taking students in August or September of 2015, and we now have about 150 people living on property in Salt Lake and about 45 people living in Denver at Site 2. And we are helping as many people as we possibly can. And I found my way back into something that I love to do.
Well, you're certainly good at it. I think that I met you about 3 years ago. I came by, a mutual friend said, you got to see this. And so I came by, and man, it was just, I thought, I got to admit, at first I was tired. I didn't, another thing to go to.
Yeah.
But man, you walk in there and just the energy just captures you, and you can just feel it's the right thing. Tell me a little bit about the expansion of the Other Side Academy, and then I want you to tell me about how is it funded.
So the Other Side Academy, it's interesting. It really is the anomaly. There's only a few therapeutic communities left in the world. Therapeutic community. Students who have been long-term drug addicts lived their lives on the streets, jails, and prisons. It is not a 30, 60, 90-day model. And in most cases, your 30-day model, the first question they ask you when you get to that treatment facility, how much money do you have? Yeah. Well, I don't have any. Go die. Now, they don't say go die, but they can't help you if you can't fund it. So with that being said, the Other Side Academy isn't 30, 60, or 90 days long. It's a minimum 30-month commitment. Residential, live on property. It's completely free. We don't take any money from the government. The city, the county, the state, the federal government, rich mommy and daddy, nothing. So people go, well, then how do you do it? Good question, people. We have our own social enterprises that generate our revenue. We have a moving company that does about 300 moves a month. If you look up the Other Side Movers, it's the #1 rated moving company in the entire state of Utah, ran by ex-felons and ex-drug addicts. We have 2 thrift boutiques. When you think thrift store, you think Goodwill, DI. Think Macy's or Nordstrom's, because that's how nice they are when you walk in. We have a storage facility called the Other Side Storage, and we have a small construction company called the Other Side Builders. Why is that important? Our social enterprises generate all of the revenue that allow us to cover all of our operational costs ourselves, so we don't have to take any money from the government at all, which means the minute the student gets there, whether they're off the street or out of jail, on day one, they're part of the solution, not the problem. Why is that important? When I was going to jail, who was paying for my existence?
Right.
The taxpayer. When I'm going to prison, who's paying for my existence?
Yes.
The taxpayer. When I'm going to a program that I can't pay for, and I wouldn't be in the program if I could pay for it because I'm not done getting high yet. Who's paying for it? Somebody else. When I'm in jail, I'm a burden. When I'm in prison, I'm a burden. When I'm in a program, I'm a burden. When I'm on the street, I'm a burden. Come to the Other Side Academy where we generate all of our own revenue. We are no longer a burden. We destroyed our lives. We should be responsible to fix them, period. It's called accountability.
Wow. Accountability, a word used, but not often put into action.
Absolutely.
Tell me, there's another program in the wings called the Other Side Village. Tell me about that, and how did that all come about?
So the Other Side Village is going to be about a 450 tiny home master planned community, permanent housing for the chronically homeless. We've learned over the years that there's a certain population that the Other Side Academy can't help. People who have severe mental health issues, people who are on medications, people that wouldn't do well in our fast-paced community. And over the years, we'd have to turn people away that we couldn't bring in. There's no medical doctors at our facility and nobody to administer those types of medications. It requires a whole different dynamic of help. And we've gone all over the world studying other communities that help this population. And we came back as a team, as a leadership team, me, Joseph, Tim, and others, and thought we could do what Community First in Austin, Texas is doing, what Eden Village in Springfield, Missouri is doing, what La Fageda in Spain is doing with this population. We could do that right here. Besides, it is really needed here in Salt Lake with the homeless problem.
Right.
And give them the opportunity to live in a home that is theirs, 250 to 400 square foot home, permanent housing, small rent. Most of this population are already on a subsidized income. It becomes theirs. They're responsible for it. And they're going to live in a community that's going to hold them accountable. If you move in next door to me, David, and we come over and bring you some groceries and welcome you to the Other Side Village, and you take a drink of your soda and you throw it out on the lawn, and we don't pull you up, the place will implode on itself. But instead, I'm going to go, David, we don't litter here. Go pick your can up. We're going to expect this population to at least hold themselves accountable. There'll be some rules. There'll be some accountability components where people can help one another overcome some of the issues that they're going through. The most important part is we're going to give them some dignity. Let me give you an example. I was in Community First in Austin, Texas a few years ago. We're on a golf cart going through the community, and there's a guy in a wheelchair with no legs. He has a wrench in his hand, one of those star wrenches, and he's taking the wheel off his truck. And we stop the cart, and I go, "Hey, buddy, what are you doing?" "Taking the wheel off my truck." "Why?" He says, "I'm painting it." I go, "You drive that thing? Controls are on the steering wheel." He has no legs. He's in a wheelchair. Could you imagine where he was a year or two before that? He was under a bridge or in a tent. Today, his life has meaning and it has purpose. My jaw hit the ground. I thought, I'll be darned. Will you look at this? His life now has purpose and it has meaning. All of the resources that this population will require will be on property. We'll have social enterprises from a hair salon to a coffee shop to a pastry shop. There'll be a cultural hall. It will be a city unto itself for the population that doesn't do well in mainstream society, managed by themselves with oversight by us. But what an incredible opportunity for people who are currently living on the street, in jail or in prison, or under a bridge or in a tent to live in a community of their peers, with a form of accountability built into it so they can help one another become better. The problem today is we expect nothing from this population.
Yeah. And now some of the folks that aren't positive about this would call it a project, and which just makes the hair on the back of my neck rise, because a project is a place you stay and there's no accountability. You're not expected to have a role in your community, a job, a contribution. And the one thing that really caused me and to want to be involved as I don't know what you call me, I donated a house fully furnished, so I'm a villager, I think. Is
a major donor and a contributor to a good cause is
I
what
want
we'll
to
call
be
you,
a
David.
villager.
Yeah, you're a villager. Yep.
Yeah, I want to be a villager.
Yep.
But it's the accountability piece that reprogramming the subconscious mind to you matter.
Yeah.
You said something earlier in a speech I watched, which you said, how did you change? He said, well, I just acted accountable. I acted honest for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of days until I became accountable. I became honest.
Act as
I
if until you
became
become
truthful. And that's reprogram the 80% of your brain that doesn't know right or wrong. It just does it.
Here's the thing that people don't understand, and maybe they don't want to because there's so much money involved in the programs that currently aren't working. They want to call it a project. Well, theirs isn't working.
Yeah.
Or we wouldn't have the problem we have. And I say that to people and it offends them, and I don't care. The reason why it offends people is because it's true. Because if I said something that wasn't true, they wouldn't get offended. So they can save that. Yeah. This population, people right now are living in the world, going to work every day, and that's hard enough. Could you imagine living on the street trying to survive? That's hard. If they can live on the street and not die and survive. When you live in an encampment, somebody is in charge of that encampment. There's already a leader in that encampment. That's why you see lots of little pockets of people outside of those encampments, because they want to try to do it on their own. They're surviving on the street. All we need to do is show them some guidance, some love, have some expectations, show them that it can be done, and let them become the best versions of themselves to whatever degree they're able to. Some people are going to be able to work in those social enterprises for an hour a day. Some 8 hours a day. Some will have to work outside. Some will have to work inside. We'll figure out what they can do and then allow them to become the 2.0 version of themselves.
Well, wonderful program. I don't want to get negative with the administration because I'm very direct in my feelings towards a lack of leadership. This one is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And as we look at the providers, it's become almost an industrial complex that we're feeding. Not a little bit of money. In this state, $350 million, I think, is in the budget. And we got to look outside of what isn't working. And just, there's two ways you can think. Some people think things that are and say, why? And then they listen to all the people, woe is me, it's never going to be. Others dream dreams that never were and say, why not? And I would just hope that the listeners of this program today will reach out to our city council, to our mayor, and I believe all of them want to do the right thing, but they're afraid to be blamed. You can't lead without being willing to do something that hasn't been done before. And the other side village, we need that zoning. We need that support of the city council. And I think we're close. I think the mayor wants to be on board. And Mayor, this is the one thing you can do to really be progressive in this area. And please block out all those folks that say why it can't work. And let's start looking at why it can work.
Absolutely, David.
David, I want to thank you so much for coming on our program today. I love what you do. Man, you're top on my list. Thank you.
Thank you, David. It's an honor to be here with you.
Perfect.